season bow good? I've heard it is, actually.
They say a man like Dominic Valenti doesn't have a heart. They say he buried it 3 years ago in the same grave as his murdered wife. But they were wrong. He didn't bury his heart. He hid it inside a 2-year-old girl who hadn't spoken a single word since the day she was born. Not a cry, not a whisper. Until the night she saw her. A broke, exhausted waitress named Alice, just trying to survive her shift. When that little girl raised her shaking finger, pointed at a stranger and screamed, "Mama!" For the first time, she didn't just break the silence. She signed Alice's death warrant. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Alice Miller adjusted her apron, wincing as the knot dug into her lower back. It was 8:45 p.m. at Le Pont, a restaurant that charged more for a salad than Alice made in a week. She didn't belong here. She knew it. The manager knew it, and the customers certainly knew it. But she needed the tips. Her landlord, Mr. Henderson, had made it clear rent was due on Tuesday, or her stuff was on the curb on Wednesday. "Table 4 needs a refill on the Pinot," the floor manager Grayson hissed as he walked past her. "And stop looking so tired. You're depressing the clientele." "Yes, sir," Alice murmured, brushing a stray lock of chestnut hair behind her ear. She grabbed the water pitcher and moved toward the back of the room. That was the VIP section usually reserved for tech CEOs or visiting politicians. But tonight the atmosphere in the back corner was different, heavier. The air felt pressurized like the moments before a thunderstorm breaks. There were 4 men at the table. 3 of them were built like linebackers, their suits straining at the shoulders. They didn't look at the menus. They looked at the exits. But it was the 4th man who sucked the oxygen out of the room. Dominic Valenti. Alice didn't follow the mob news closely, but everyone in the city knew the face. Sharp cheekbones that could cut glass eyes the color of a stormy sea, and a stillness about him that was more terrifying than any shout. He sat with a rigid posture sipping an espresso. Next to him in a high chair that looked ridiculously out of place among the crystal wine glasses sat a toddler. She was beautiful with dark curls that tumbled over a velvet dress, but her expression was haunting. She was staring at the tablecloth, her tiny hands folded in her lap. She looked like a doll that had been placed on a shelf and forgotten. Alice approached the table, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Just pour the water. Don't look at them. Get the tip. Go home." "Sparkling or still gentleman?" Alice asked. Her voice didn't shake, which she counted as a victory. One of the bodyguards, a man with a scar running through his eyebrow, moved to block her. Dominic raised a single hand. The bodyguard sat back down instantly. "Still," Dominic said. His voice was a low baritone, rough like gravel. "For the table. And warm milk for my daughter." "Of course," Alice said. She moved to the child's side. Up close, the little girl looked even more fragile. Her eyes were wide and unfocused. Alice felt a sudden, inexplicable pang of sadness in her chest. It was a physical ache, sharp and sudden. "Hi there, sweetie," Alice whispered impulsively as she set a napkin down. "That's a pretty dress." The bodyguard tensed. You didn't speak to the Valenti child. Everyone knew the rumors. The girl, Sophia, was broken. Doctors, therapists, specialists, no one could get her to interact. Sophia didn't react. She didn't blink. Alice sighed internally. She reached for the heavy crystal pitcher, to fill Dominic's glass. As she leaned over the silver locket, she wore a cheap trinket from a pawn shop she bought to feel less empty, swung out from her uniform collar. It caught the dim light of the chandelier, flashing a brief beam of light across the table. The flash of light hit Sophia's eyes. The little girl blinked. Her head snapped up. For the first time in her life, Sophia Valenti made eye contact, but not with her father. She locked eyes with Alice. Time seemed to warp. The clinking of silverware, the low hum of jazz, the rain against the window. It all vanished. Alice froze, the picture suspended in mid-air. She felt trapped in the child's gaze, a sensation of déjà vu so powerful it made her dizzy. Sophia's mouth opened, her lips dry and trembling parted. Dominic noticed the shift. He froze his espresso cup halfway to his mouth. He looked at his daughter with an intensity that could burn. Sophia raised a small, trembling hand. She pointed a finger directly at Alice's face. A sound tore from the child's throat. It was rusty, unused, and desperate. Ma. The restaurant went silent. Even the couple 3 tables away stopped chewing. Dominic's glass shattered in his hand. He didn't seem to notice the hot coffee burning his skin. "Mama!" Sophia screamed. It wasn't a question. It was a declaration of absolute certainty. "Mama!" The pitcher slipped from Alice's sweat-slicked fingers. It crashed onto the table, sending ice water flooding over the expensive tablecloth and onto Dominic's lap. Alice gasped, horrified. "Oh my God, I'm so sore." Click. Before she could finish the apology, 3 Glocks were pointed at her head. The bodyguards were on their feet, forming a wall around Dominic and Sophia. "Drop it!" one of them shouted, though she was holding nothing but air. Alice threw her hands up, trembling violently. I don't know why she—" Sophia began to wail. It was a heart-wrenching, guttural sound. She was reaching for Alice, her small body straining against the straps of the high chair. Mama, up. Dominic stood up slowly. He ignored the water soaking his trousers. He ignored the guns. He ignored the terrified manager rushing over. His eyes were fixed on Alice. He looked at her not as a waitress, but as a ghost. He scanned her face, dissecting every pore, every feature. "Lower the weapons," Dominic commanded softly. "Boss." She could be a threat, the scarred bodyguard argued. "The girl, she's never spoken. This is a trigger." "I said lower them." The guns lowered, but the tension remained. Dominic walked around the table until he was inches from Alice. She could smell sandalwood rain and gunpowder. "Who sent you?" he asked. His voice was terrifyingly calm. "Nobody," Alice stammered, tears pricking her eyes. "I'm just a waitress. My name is Alice Miller. I've worked here for 6 months. I swear I don't know you." "My daughter hasn't spoken a word in 2 years," Dominic said, stepping closer. "She doesn't recognize anyone. She doesn't even recognize me half the time. Why does she think you are her mother?" "I don't know," Alice cried. Sophia was still screaming, reaching out her fingers, opening and closing. "Mama, don't go, Mama." Dominic looked at his daughter, his expression cracking for a split second, revealing a well of agony so deep it terrified Alice. He looked back at Alice. "Get your coat," he said. Alice blinked. "What? You're coming with us?" I can't. I have a shift. I have to work. I'm not going anywhere with you." Dominic turned to the manager, Grayson, who was cowering behind the host stand. "Grayson, she's fired, correct?" Grayson swallowed hard. Yes. Yes, Mr. Valenti. Whatever you say. Dominic turned back to Alice. He pulled a thick envelope from his jacket pocket and tossed it onto the wet table. There's $10,000 in there. That covers your shift and your inconvenience. Now you can walk out to the car on your own legs, or Matteo can carry you. But you are not leaving my daughter's sight while she is crying. Alice looked at the money. She looked at the guns still held loosely at the men's sides. Then she looked at Sophia. The little girl's face was red tears streaming down her cheeks. Her arm still outstretched, waiting. Alice felt a strange pull in her gut. It wasn't just fear. It was instinct. "I'll walk," Alice whispered. The drive to the Valenti estate was silent, suffocatingly so. Alice sat in the back of the armored SUV, sandwiched between the car door and the car seat. Sophia had finally stopped screaming, but only because she had gripped Alice's hand with a strength that was shocking for a toddler. She was asleep now, her head resting awkwardly against the side wing of the car seat, but her fingers were woven tight through Alice's. Every time Alice tried to gently pull away, Sophia would whimper in her sleep, and Dominic, watching from the rear-view mirror, would stiffen. "Don't let go," he ordered from the front passenger seat. "I wasn't going to," Alice replied defenselessly. "I just didn't want to hurt her circulation." They pulled up to a set of iron gates that looked like they belonged in a Gothic novel. They swung open, revealing a winding driveway lined with ancient oaks. The house at the end wasn't a house. It was a fortress masked as a mansion. Grey stone ivy and dark windows. When the car stopped, Dominic opened the back door. He moved to unbuckle Sophia. "I'll take her," he said. But the moment he touched Sophia, she woke up. Her eyes flew open, panicked. She saw Dominic and immediately looked for Alice. When she saw Alice was still there, she exhaled. "Mama Carrie," Sophia demanded. Her voice was raspy from the crying. Dominic flinched. It was a micro-expression, a tightening of the jaw. But Alice saw it. It hurt him. It hurt him that his daughter wanted a stranger over him. "She doesn't know you, Sophia," Dominic said gently. "She's tired. Mama Carrie," Sophia screamed, her voice rising to that hysterical pitch again. Dominic stepped back, defeated. He gestured to Alice. "Take her." Alice unbuckled the child. As she lifted Sophia, the girl wrapped her legs around Alice's waist and buried her face in Alice's neck, inhaling deeply. Alice froze. The child smelled of lavender soap and milk. And something else. Something familiar. "Why does this feel right?" Alice thought, panic rising in her throat. "I've never had a baby. I've never been pregnant. Why does her weight feel like it belongs on my hip?" They walked inside. The foyer was cavernous, with marble floors that echoed their footsteps. An older woman in a housekeeper's uniform hurried out. This was Maria. "Signore Valenti, is she okay?" "We heard nothing but—" Maria stopped dead when she saw Alice holding the child. "Madre di Dio." "She spoke, Maria," Dominic said, shucking off his wet coat. "She called her mother." Maria stared at Alice, her hand covering her mouth. "But she looks nothing like—" "I know." Dominic cut her off. "Set up the guest room in the east wing, the one next to the nursery." "Wait a minute," Alice interrupted, shifting Sophia's weight. "I agreed to come here to calm her down. I didn't agree to move in. I have a cat. I have a life." Dominic turned to her. The look in his eyes was predatory. "You have an eviction notice on your counter, Alice Miller. You have 3 maxed-out credit cards. You dropped out of nursing school 2 years ago because you couldn't afford the tuition. You have no family in the state. Your life, as you call it, is falling apart. Alice's blood ran cold. How do you know that? I had my team run a background check the moment we left the restaurant. I know everything about you. Or rather, I know everything that's on paper. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. My daughter has been silent since the night my wife was murdered. Tonight, she spoke. She chose you. I don't believe in coincidences, Miss Miller. I believe in leverage. Are you kidnapping me? Alice asked, her voice trembling. No. I'm offering you a job. A very high-paying job. Dominic pulled a contract from the inside pocket of his suit jacket. He must have had it printed in the car. Live-in nanny. Companion. Whatever you want to call it. You stay here. You keep Sophia talking. You keep her happy. And if I refuse... Dominic looked at the sleeping girl on Alice's shoulder. Look at her. Can you really walk away and let her go back to the silence? Can you represent the second abandonment of her life? It was emotional manipulation of the highest order, and it worked. Alice looked at the curls resting against her collarbone. She felt the steady heartbeat against her chest. What about my cat? Alice asked weakly. Matteo will fetch the cat, Dominic said, a hint of victory in his voice. And your clothes, and he will pay your landlord. For how long? Until I figure out who you really are, Dominic said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Because nobody looks at a stranger with that much love, Alice. Either you are the greatest actress in the world, or there is a piece of this puzzle I am missing. And until I find it, you belong to the Valenti family. He turned and walked toward the library, barking orders at his men. Alice stood in the massive hallway, holding the sleeping heiress of the city's most dangerous crime family. She looked at Maria, the housekeeper. Maria didn't smile. She looked at Alice with a mixture of pity and fear. Be careful, child, Maria whispered, crossing herself. This house, it eats beautiful things, and the ghost of the mistress, she does not like to be replaced. Alice felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She wasn't just a nanny. She was a placeholder for a dead woman, and she had just walked into a lion's den, wearing a stake for a necklace. The first night in the Valenti estate was sleepless. The bed in the guest room was softer than anything Alice had ever slept on the sheets, likely costing more than her car. But the silence of the house was oppressive. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was a waiting silence. Alice lay awake, listening to the rhythm of Sophia's breathing in the crib they had moved into the room at Alice's insistence. Every time Alice closed her eyes, she saw the restaurant again, the shattered glass, the gun barrels, and the absolute desperation in the child's eyes. Mama. Why Alice touched her own face in the dark. She was just Alice Miller from Ohio. She had a dead-end job, a mountain of debt, and a past that was thoroughly boring. She wasn't a Mafia princess, and she certainly wasn't a mother. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, thirst drove her out of bed. She crept out of the room, careful not to wake the guards posted at the end of the hallway. The mansion was a labyrinth of shadows. She found her way to the kitchen, poured a glass of water and turned to head back. But she took a wrong turn. Instead of the guest corridor, she found herself in the west wing. The air here was colder, the dust motes dancing in the moonlight that streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows. At the end of the hall, double doors stood slightly ajar. Drawn by a curiosity she couldn't explain. Alice pushed them open. It was a master suite, frozen in time. Perfume bottles sat on the vanity, gathered dust. A silk robe was draped over a chair, and above the fireplace hung a massive oil painting. Alice walked toward it, the floorboards creaking beneath her bare feet. The woman in the painting was breathtaking. She had cascading blonde hair that looked like sun-gold eyes the color of sky-blue topaz, and a smile that was both innocent and mischievous. She was wearing a white gown, her hand resting on a pregnant belly. This was her, Dominic's wife, Sophia's mother. Alice stared at the portrait, then looked at her own reflection in the dusty vanity mirror. Dark chestnut hair, hazel eyes with flecks of green, a sharp jawline compared to the woman's soft, heart-shaped face. They looked nothing alike, not even a little bit. She was beautiful, wasn't she? Alice spun around, gasping. Dominic was standing in the doorway. He had discarded his suit jacket and tie, his white dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms covered in intricate ink. He held a tumbler of amber liquid, and he looked like he had been drinking it for a while. I'm sorry, Alice stammered, backing away from the painting. I got lost. I was looking for the nursery. Liar, Dominic said, but there was no heat in it, only exhaustion. He walked into the room, his eyes fixed on the painting. Her name was Natalia. She was the only good thing that ever happened to this family. She looks like an angel, Alice whispered. She was. Dominic took a sip of his drink. And I got her killed. The confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Dominic. Alice started using his first name without thinking. You can't blame yourself for I am the Don of the Valenti crime family. Alice, he cut her off, his voice hardening. Everything that happens is my responsibility. A car bomb, meant for me. She took the car that morning to go to the doctor. Sophia was delivered by emergency C-section while Natalia bled out on the asphalt. He turned his gaze to Alice. The intensity of it pinned her to the spot. So tell me, Alice Miller, why does my daughter, who has never spoken, who has the eyes of her mother, why does she look at you, a stranger who looks nothing like Natalia, and see her? I don't know, Alice said, her voice shaking. Maybe she just needs a mom. Any mom. Dominic stepped closer. He was dangerously close now. Alice could feel the heat radiating off him. He reached out his rough thumb, tracing the line of her jaw. Alice stopped breathing. No. Dominic murmured, his eyes searching hers. Sophia is broken, but she isn't stupid. She sees something, and standing here in this moonlight, I'm terrified that I'm starting to see it too. For a second, Alice thought he was going to kiss her. The air between them crackled with a sudden, confusing electricity. Ahem! The sound of a throat clearing shattered the moment. Dominic pulled back instantly, his face masking over into cold indifference. Alice stepped back, her heart racing. Standing in the hallway was a man who looked like an older, rotter version of Dominic. He had the same nose, but his eyes were beady, shifting rapidly. He wore a silk dressing gown and a smirk that made Alice's skin crawl. Uncle Salvatore, Dominic said, his voice flat. I didn't know you were awake. The noise nipote, Salvatore said, his eyes raking over Alice's pajamas with a lecherous grin. I heard footsteps. I thought perhaps we had intruders, but I see it's just the help. This is Alice, Dominic said, placing himself subtly between Alice and his uncle. She is Sophia's new nanny. Ah, yes. The magical waitress, Salvatore chuckled, stepping into the room. The one who performed the miracle. I heard the boys talking. Tell me, sweetheart, how much is he paying you to play mommy? Or is the payment In kind. Watch your mouth. Sal. Dominic growled. It was a warning, low and lethal. Salvatore held up his hands in mock surrender. Just asking questions, Dom. You know how paranoid I get. A stranger comes in. The kid suddenly talks, and now she's wandering the late wife's bedroom in the middle of the night. If I didn't know better, I'd say it was a setup. Salvatore looked at Alice, his smile vanishing. We are going to run a DNA test, of course, just to be sure she isn't planted. Matteo is already handling it, Dominic said. Go to bed, Sal. Salvatore nodded, his eyes lingering on Alice one last time. Welcome to the family, Alice. Watch your step. The floors are slippery. He turned and left. Dominic turned back to Alice. The moment of intimacy was gone, replaced by the cold reality of his world. Go back to your room, he ordered. Lock the door, and do not open it for anyone but me or Matteo. Who is he? Alice asked, hugging her arms around herself. My father's brother, Dominic said, staring into the dark hallway. And the man who is next in line if I die. Sleep well, Alice. The next 3 days fell into a strange routine. Alice spent every waking hour with Sophia. The transformation in the child was miraculous. Sophia didn't speak much, mostly single words like apple, play, and constantly mama. But the fear in her eyes had been replaced by a bright curiosity. She clung to Alice like a shadow. Alice, however, felt like she was being watched constantly, by the cameras in the ceiling, by the guards at the doors, by Salvatore, who seemed to always be lurking in the corners with a glass of scotch, and by Dominic. He didn't speak to her much, but she felt his eyes on her during dinner, or when she was playing with Sophia in the courtyard. He was studying her, waiting for a crack in her facade. On the 4th day, the crack appeared, but not the one he expected. It was a Tuesday afternoon. The rain had finally stopped, and Dominic had decided to have lunch on the terrace. It was a rare moment of exposure. Usually they ate inside behind bulletproof glass. But Sophia wanted to see the butterflies. Alice sat feeding Sophia slices of pear, while Dominic reviewed documents on a tablet. Matteo, the head of security, stood by the terrace doors, scanning the perimeter. The merger with the Irish syndicate is stalling, Dominic muttered to Matteo without looking up. They want more territory in the docks. They're pushing their luck, boss, Matteo replied. Alice tried to tune them out. She was focusing on a new waiter who was bringing out a tray of iced tea. She hadn't seen him before. He was young, blonde, and looked nervous. His hands were shaking slightly as he balanced the silver tray. He's nervous, Alice thought. New job jitters. But then she noticed something else. As the waiter leaned down to place the glass near Dominic, his sleeve rode up. There was a tattoo on the inside of his wrist, a small black scorpion. Alice's brain short-circuited. A sharp, piercing headache blinded her for a split second, and a voice that wasn't hers screamed in her head. Scorpion. Venom. Breath. Hold. It wasn't a thought, it was an instinct, a reflex buried under layers of fog. The waiter reached into his pocket. He wasn't reaching for a napkin. His hand was moving toward his waistband, toward the small of his back. The movement was subtle, practiced. Too fast for a waiter. Matteo was looking at the garden gate. Dominic was looking at his tablet. No one saw it but Alice. The waiter's hand came up, holding a suppressed pistol. Down! The scream tore out of Alice's throat before she made the conscious decision to speak. In one fluid motion, Alice didn't dive under the table. She didn't scream and cover her eyes. She lunged. She threw her body over Sophia's high chair, unbuckling it with one hand, and yanking the child down to the stone floor, shielding Sophia's small body with her own. At the same time, she grabbed a heavy steak knife from the table and hurled it blindly in the direction of the waiter. Thwack! The knife embedded itself in the waiter's shoulder just as he pulled the trigger. Foot! The bullet meant for Dominic's head went wide, shattering the glass door behind him. The waiter screamed, dropping the gun as he clutched his bleeding shoulder. Dominic was moving instantly. He flipped the heavy oak table on its side to create cover, drawing his own weapon. Matteo was already on top of the screaming waiter, pinning him to the ground. "Clear. Secure the perimeter," Matteo shouted into his radio. Silence fell over the terrace, broken only by Sophia's terrified sobbing. Alice lay on the ground, curling around Sophia. Her heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She was gasping for air, her vision tunneling. "How did I do that?" she thought, looking at her hands. "I've never held a knife like that. I've never seen a gun in real life before, 3 days ago." Dominic walked over to the waiter, his face a mask of cold fury. He looked at the knife sticking out of the man's shoulder. Then he looked at Alice. He walked over to her, holstering his gun. He knelt down. "Alice," he asked softly, "is she okay?" Alice gasped, checking Sophia's head. "Is she hurt?" "She's fine. You saved her." Dominic reached out and grabbed Alice's wrist. His grip was iron. "And you saved me." He pulled her up. Sophia was immediately scooped up by a secondary guard and rushed inside to safety. Alice stood there shaking. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her knees weak. Dominic didn't let go of her wrist. He dragged her closer, his eyes scanning her face with a new, terrifying intensity. "Who are you?" he demanded. I told you. I'm Alice Miller." Dominic pointed at the waiter, who was being dragged away by Matteo. "That man is a professional hitman from the Cortez cartel. He moves fast." Matteo didn't see him. I didn't see him. Dominic stepped closer until his lips were inches from her ear. "You spotted the threat. You cleared the line of fire. You shielded the asset, and you threw a steak knife with enough accuracy to disable a moving target from 10 feet away." He pulled back, looking into her hazel eyes. "Waitresses don't do that, Alice. Soldiers do. Assassins do." "I don't know how I did it," Alice cried, tears spilling over. I just saw the tattoo and I reacted. I swear to you, Dominic, I don't know." Dominic stared at her for a long, agonizing moment. He was looking for the lie. But all he saw was genuine, terrified confusion. "The tattoo," Dominic said quietly. "You recognized the scorpion." I think so. I don't know why. It just felt bad." Dominic released her wrist. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. The adrenaline of the attack was mixing with something else. He looked at Alice, disheveled, terrified, and undeniably lethal. "We have a problem, Alice," Dominic said. The DNA test results came back an hour ago. Matteo texted me just before we came outside." Alice's stomach dropped. "And you aren't related to Sophia. You aren't her mother." Alice let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. I told you I wasn't." "But," Dominic continued, his voice dropping an octave, "the test flagged something else. Your DNA isn't in the civilian database. It's in the classified government database. The file is redacted, blacked out." He stepped closer again, his voice a mix of awe and danger. "You don't exist, Alice Miller. The woman you think you are, she's a ghost. And whoever you were before, she was dangerous. Alice stared at him, the world spinning. Redacted, classified. I don't understand. Neither do I, Dominic said, reaching out to brush a stray hair from her forehead. His touch was gentler this time. But until we figure it out, you are the only person in this world I can trust to protect my daughter. Because whoever you used to be, she was one hell of a fighter. Suddenly the terrace doors burst open. Salvatore came running out, looking feignedly out of breath. Dom, I heard shots. Are you okay? Dominic looked at his uncle. Then he looked at the blood on the floor, where the waiter had been. I'm fine, Sal, Dominic lied smoothly. Just a stray dog got into the grounds. Alice scared it off. Dominic's arm snaked around Alice's waist, pulling her flush against his side. It was a possessive, protective gesture. Come, Alice, he said, turning her toward the house. We have a lot to talk about. As they walked past Salvatore, Alice saw the uncle's eyes flick to the blood, then to her. There was no relief in his eyes, only calculation and fear. They didn't go back to the mansion. The estate was compromised. If a waiter could get a gun onto the terrace, the walls of the Valenti fortress were rotting from the inside. Dominic drove them north, deep into the Cascade Mountains. The vehicle was different this time, a nondescript black truck, armored but unassuming. Sophia was strapped in the back, sound asleep, clutching a stuffed bear Alice had grabbed before they fled. Alice stared out the window at the blurring pine trees. Her hands were still trembling, not from fear, but from a terrifying surge of energy she couldn't suppress. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the waiter's muscle twitch. She saw the trajectory of the knife. She felt the recoil of a gun she hadn't even fired. Stop shaking, Dominic said. He didn't look away from the road. Adrenaline dump. It's normal after a kill, or a near kill. I'm not shaking because I'm scared, Alice whispered. I'm shaking because I liked it. Dominic glanced at her, then his eyes dark. Competence feels good, Alice, especially when you've spent 2 years thinking you were nobody. They arrived at a cabin nestled near a frozen lake. It was modern, all glass and timber, hidden from the main road by a mile of dense forest. Dominic swept the house with a scanner, while Alice carried Sophia to a bedroom. Once the child was settled, Alice walked into the main living area. Dominic was pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. He slid one across the granite island toward her. Drink. It helps with the noise in your head. Alice took the glass and downed it in one burn. She slammed the glass down. Tell me what's happening to me, Dominic. I'm a waitress. I serve pasta. I don't neutralize hitmen. You aren't a waitress, Dominic said, walking around the island until he stood directly in front of her. I watched you. You moved before the threat registered on my security details radar. You have muscle memory that takes a decade to build. He set his glass down. Hit me. Alice blinked. What? Hit me. Try to take me down. I'm not going to. Dominic moved. It was a blur. He threw a punch aimed at her face, stopping an inch from her nose. Alice didn't flinch. In fact, before her brain could process the threat, her body had already reacted. Her left arm came up to block, deflecting his wrist, while her right leg swept behind his knee. She twisted her hips, using his momentum against him. In under 2 seconds, the Don of the Valenti family was pinned against the kitchen counter. Alice's forearm pressed against his throat, her other hand ready to strike his temple. Silence filled the room. The only sound was their heavy breathing. Alice stared at him. her eyes wide with horror. She released him and stumbled back. "Oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to—" Dominic rubbed his throat, but he wasn't angry. He was looking at her with a mixture of fascination and hunger. "Krav Maga," he murmured. "Mixed with Systema, that's not street fighting, Alice. That's military grade. Special ops." He stepped toward her again. This time there was no aggression. The air in the cabin shifted, becoming thick and charged. "Who are you?" he whispered, reaching out to touch the side of her face. "I don't know," she cried softly. "I have no memories before the hospital in Ohio. They told me I was in a car accident. They told me my name was Alice Miller." "They lied," Dominic said. His thumb brushed her lip. "And whoever they are, they built a cage to keep a lioness inside." He looked at her lips, then up to her eyes. The danger of the day, the violence, the mystery, it all culminated in a magnetic pull neither of them could resist. "You saved my daughter," Dominic said, his voice rough. "And you saved me. I owe you a debt." "You don't owe me anything," Alice breathed. "I do." Dominic lowered his head and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, fueled by the adrenaline of survival. Alice kissed him back, her hands tangling in his hair, a sense of rightness exploding in her chest. She knew this man. Not his name, maybe, but his taste, his scent, his intensity. For a moment, the world outside fell away. There was only the fire in the grate and the heat of his hands on her waist. But the moment was shattered by a sudden blinding spike of pain in Alice's head. She gasped, pulling away, clutching her temples. "Alice!" Dominic steadied her. "Flashback." She groaned, squeezing her eyes shut. Images were assaulting her. Rapid fire. A rainy dock. A woman with blonde hair laughing. A silver locket. A gun firing. Blood on the asphalt. A baby crying. "I see her!" Alice gasped, her knees giving way. Dominic caught her. "I see Natalia." Dominic froze. "What do you see?" She's handing me something. A pacifier. She's laughing. She says, "Promise me, Sienna. Promise me you'll watch the perimeter." Dominic went rigid. "Sienna." Alice looked up at him. Tears streaming down her face, the headache pulsing behind her eyes. "Who is Sienna?" Dominic's face drained of color. He looked like he had seen a ghost. "Sienna was Natalia's cousin," he whispered. "Her best friend, and her head of security." Dominic helped Alice to the sofa. He paced the room, running a hand through his hair, his mind racing. "Sienna died," Dominic said, his voice shaking. "She died the same day Natalia did. They were in the car together. The bomb. The ambush. The police report said Sienna's body was washed into the river. They never found it, but the amount of blood in the front seat, no one could have survived that." Alice sat clutching a throw pillow, the pieces of her fractured mind slowly colliding. "I wasn't driving. I was in the passenger seat. Natalia was driving because she wanted ice cream. She made me switch seats." Dominic stopped pacing. He stared at her. "Yes, that's right. Natalia always hated being driven." "I remember the explosion," Alice Sienna whispered. Her voice was changing. It was becoming stronger, colder. "It wasn't a car bomb, Dominic. It was an RPG. From the overpass." "The report said car bomb," Dominic argued. "The report was faked," she snapped. The authority in her voice was absolute. I saw the flash. I threw myself over Natalia, but the shrapnel, it came through the door. I took a hit to the head. I fell out, into the water. She looked at her hands. I drifted. Someone found me. They must have put me in a hospital, given me a fake name. Why, to hide you, Dominic realized, or to keep you from talking. Just then Dominic's satellite phone buzzed. It was Matteo. "Boss!" Matteo's voice was frantic. "I got the unredacted file. You need to see this." "Read it to me," Dominic commanded. "The woman, Alice Miller. Her real name is Sienna Rossi, former CI a Black Ops division. She went off-grid 4 years ago to work private security for your wife." "We know that," Dominic said. "What else?" "Boss, the file says she was put into the Lazarus Protocol. It's a witness protection program for burned spies, but it wasn't the government who paid for her medical bills and gave her the new identity." Dominic's grip on the phone tightened. "Who paid for it?" "The payment trail leads to a shell company in the Cayman Islands," Matteo said. "The company is registered to Salvatore Valenti." The room went deadly silent. Dominic looked at Alice/Sienna. "Salvatore saved you." "No," Alice said. Her eyes were hard now. The fog was lifting completely. "He didn't save me. He hid me. He paid the doctors to scramble my brain with meds to keep me sedated in Ohio, to make sure I never remembered." "Why?" Dominic asked. "Because I saw the shooter," Alice said. She stood up. The slouch of the waitress was gone. She stood with the lethal grace of a predator. "It wasn't a rival gang, Dominic. The man on the overpass. The man who fired the RPG that killed your wife." She looked Dominic dead in the eye. "It was Salvatore." The revelation hit the room like a physical blow. Dominic staggered back, his face twisting in agony and rage. His own uncle. His blood. "He wanted the throne," Dominic hissed. "He killed Natalia to break me. He thought if I was grieving I would step down. But I didn't step down. I became a monster. And he kept me alive as an insurance policy," Alice realized. Or maybe he just thought I was brain dead, and it was easier than hiding a body. But when I showed up at the restaurant, when Sophia recognized me— "Sophia remembered you," Dominic said softly. "You were always with Natalia. You were the one who guarded the nursery." "I was the one who taught her to wave," Alice said, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I was Sia, not Mama." She was trying to say Sia. The tenderness of the memory was cut short by the sound of breaking glass. A canister smashed through the living room window, rolling onto the floor. It hissed, spewing white smoke. "Tear gas!" Alice shouted. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed the canister with her bare hand and hurled it back out the broken window, coughing. "They found us!" Dominic roared, drawing his weapon. "Matteo said the line was secure. Salvatore has ears everywhere," Alice yelled. "Go get Sophia. I'll hold the door. I'm not leaving you. I'm not a waitress anymore." "Dom!" Alice screamed, flipping the heavy oak table to create a barricade. She grabbed a spare magazine from the counter, where Dominic had left his gear. She slammed it into a pistol she pulled from his ankle holster. "I'm the woman who's going to kill your uncle. Now move." Dominic hesitated for a fraction of a second, looking at this woman, this stranger, this ghost, this warrior who had come back from the dead to protect his family. "Don't die on me," he commanded. "Not today," she smirked. Dominic ran to the back bedroom for Sophia. Alice took a position behind the overturned table. Through the smoke, she saw shadows moving in the snow. Laser sights cut through the gloom. Come on, boys, she whispered, her finger tightening on the trigger. Let's see if I'm still rusty. The front door exploded inward. Alice opened fire. 2 shots, 2 hits. The first 2 men dropped in the snow. But there were more. A dozen mercenaries, heavily armed, fanning out around the cabin. Dominic emerged from the hallway, Sophia strapped to his chest in a carrier, a shotgun in his hands. "Back door is blocked," he yelled over the gunfire. "They have us surrounded. The snowmobile," Alice shouted, firing a suppression round at the window. "In the shed. It fits 2. There are 3 of us. Take Sophia. Go." "No, Dominic." Alice turned to him, her eyes blazing. "I failed Natalia. I let her die. I am not letting her daughter die tonight. Get on that bike and get her to the city. I will buy you time." Dominic looked at her. He saw the resolve. He saw the love not just for him, but for the promise she had made to a dead woman. He grabbed her face and kissed her hard. "I'm coming back. If you're not here, I will burn the world down to find you. Go." Dominic kicked open the side door and sprinted for the shed. Alice turned back to the breach. She stood up, exposing herself to draw their fire. "Hey," she screamed at the mercenaries. "Look at me. I'm the one you want." Bullets chewed up the wood around her. She didn't flinch. She returned fire, with terrifying precision counting the shots. 1, 2, 3. She heard the roar of the snowmobile engine. She heard it tear away into the dark forest. She smiled. Sophia was safe. Then a shadow loomed in the broken doorway. It wasn't a mercenary. It was Salvatore. He was wearing a heavy fur coat, holding a taser rifle. He didn't want to kill her. He wanted to silence her. "Hello, Sienna." He smiled, his teeth yellow in the moonlight. "Long time no see." Alice raised her gun, but it clicked empty. Salvatore pulled the trigger. 2 prongs hit her chest. 50,000 volts ripped through her body. Alice's world went white, then black. The last thing she heard was Salvatore's laugh. "Pack her up, boys. We have a wedding to plan." The smell of rust and brine woke her. Alice. No Sienna opened her eyes. Her head throbbed where the taser prongs had hit, but her mind was crystal clear. She was zip-tied to a steel chair in the center of a warehouse. Shipping containers stacked high around her formed a makeshift arena. Standing in front of her, inspecting a combat knife, was Salvatore. "You're awake," he smiled, testing the blade against his thumb. "Good. I wanted you to see the end." "You're a sloppy cleaner, Sal," Sienna rasped, testing the tensile strength of the zip ties. They were tight. "You didn't verify the kill 4 years ago, and you didn't check my pockets today." Salvatore laughed. "I checked your gun. It was empty." "I wasn't talking about the gun." A low rumble shook the floor. It wasn't thunder. It was an engine roaring angry and getting closer. "He's here." Salvatore grinned, turning toward the massive bay doors. "I told him if he wanted you back, he had to come alone. And because he is a sentimental fool, just like his father, he listened." The roar became a scream of metal. A black armored SUV smashed through the corrugated metal doors, debris flying everywhere. It skidded to a halt, taking heavy fire from the 20 men Salvatore had positioned on the catwalks. The driver's door flew open. Dominic rolled out, taking cover behind the engine block. He was moving with a fluid, lethal grace, dropping 2 men on the upper gantry with 2 shots. "Kill him!" Salvatore screamed, backing away. Chaos erupted. While every eye was on Dominic, Sienna made her move. She dislocated her left thumb with a sickening pop, a trick she learned in SEER training. She grit her teeth against the blinding pain, sliding her hand out of the zip tie. She was free. She grabbed the chair she had been tied to and hurled it at the nearest mercenary, who was aiming at Dominic. The heavy steel legs caught him in the temple, and he went down hard. Sienna snatched his fallen submachine gun. She popped her thumb back into the socket with a grunt of agony, then raised the weapon. "Dom high right!" she screamed. Dominic didn't hesitate. He trusted her voice implicitly. He fired blindly to his right, suppressing the flankers, while Sienna swept the left catwalk. They moved in perfect synchronization, a duet of violence they had never practiced but knew by instinct. They met in the center of the room, back to back. "You came back!" she shouted over the gunfire. "I told you!" Dominic fired 2 rounds, dropping a man charging them with a knife. "I'd burn the world down." "Salvatore is heading for the office," she yelled. "Go, I'll hold them off. Together." Dominic grabbed her hand. They moved as one unit, cutting through the remaining guards. It wasn't a fight anymore. It was an execution. The rage of a grieving husband and the precision of a betrayed spy cleared the room in under a minute. They kicked open the door to the office, overlooking the warehouse floor. Salvatore was scrambling out the back window. Dominic fired a shot into the wall beside his head. Salvatore froze, slowly raising his hands. He turned around, his face pale. "Dominic, Nipote, wait. Let's talk about this, the family. We don't spill our own blood. You spilled it first." Dominic walked forward, his eyes dead. "When you killed Natalia, when you tried to kill Sofia. It was business," Salvatore pleaded, backing up against the desk. "She was making you soft. I did it for the Empire." Dominic raised his gun to Salvatore's forehead. His finger tightened on the trigger. "Wait," Sienna said. Dominic paused. He looked at her. Sienna walked forward. Her uniform was torn. Her face bruised, but she looked like a queen. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the silver locket she had worn as a waitress, the cheap trinket she bought at a pawn shop. She opened it. Inside wasn't a picture. It was a small, folded piece of paper. "Do you know what this is, Sal?" she asked softly. Salvatore shook his head, trembling. "It's the receipt," she said, "from the diner where you met the hitman 4 years ago. I found it in your coat pocket the day of the explosion. I was going to show it to Natalia. That's why you blew up the car." She tossed the locket onto the desk. "You didn't just kill her for business," Sienna said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You killed her because she found out you were skimming from the pension fund. You're not a mob boss, Sal. You're a thief." Salvatore's eyes went wide. The dignity of his business excuse was stripped away, leaving only the pathetic reality of his greed. "Dominic!" Salvatore gasped. "Please!" Dominic looked at his uncle with pure disgust. He lowered his gun. Salvatore let out a breath of relief. "Thank you. Thank ye." Bang! Sienna didn't hesitate. She put a single bullet through Salvatore's heart. Dominic looked at her. She lowered the smoking gun. "You lowered your weapon," she said, shrugging. "I didn't." Dominic stared at her for a long second. Then a slow, weary smile spread across his face. He stepped over his uncle's body and pulled her into his arms. He buried his face in her neck, breathing in the scent of gunpowder and rain. "Is it over?" she whispered, dropping the gun. "Yes," Dominic said, holding her tighter. "The check is paid." The sun was setting over the Amalfi coast. The villa was perched on a cliff overlooking the endless blue of the Mediterranean. It was a fortress, yes, but it was also a home. Sienna sat on the terrace, watching a small figure run through the lemon grove. "Mama! Look!" Sophia, now 3 years old, came sprinting up the stone path, holding a massive, deformed lemon. She was talking a mile a minute these days, making up for lost time. "It's huge, baby." Sienna laughed, scooping the girl onto her lap. "Is that for Papa?" "For juice," Sophia declared. Dominic walked out onto the terrace carrying 2 glasses of wine. He looked younger, the heavy lines of grief around his eyes smoothed away by months of peace. He wore a simple linen shirt, not a suit. He set the wine down and kissed the top of Sophia's head. "That is a magnificent lemon principessa." Sophia wriggled down to go find another one. Dominic sat next to Sienna, taking her hand. On her finger sat a ring that wasn't a diamond, but a rare blue topaz, the same color as Natalia's eyes. It wasn't a replacement. It was a tribute and a promise of a new future. "Matteo called," Dominic said, looking out at the sea. "Oh." Sienna took a sip of wine. "Is the Seattle territory quiet?" "Quiet enough. He asked if we were ever coming back." Sienna looked at Sophia, who was now chasing a butterfly near the edge of the garden, safely fenced, of course. She thought about the rain in Seattle. She thought about the diner. She thought about the loneliness that had eaten her alive for 2 years. Then she looked at Dominic, the man who had seen her when she was invisible. "Tell him we're retired." Sienna smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "The waitress quit, and the assassin, well, she's busy." "Busy doing what?" Dominic murmured, kissing her temple. Sienna watched the little girl who had pointed a finger and saved all their lives. "Busy being a mama. And that, my friends, is how a single word can bring down an empire." Dominic thought he was saving a waitress, but he was actually waking up a warrior. It turns out the strongest bond in the world isn't blood. It's the choice to love and the will to protect it at all costs. Sienna Valenti finally got the life she deserved, not because she was saved by a prince, but because she fought for it. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. What did you think of the twist about her memory? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want more stories about dangerous love, dark secrets and happy endings, make sure to subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss a chapter. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.